Today I'm going to talk to a polyglot. His name is Davide, he is from Italy, and one of the languages he speaks is Russian. So I want to talk to him about learning Russian as a foreign language, what are the difficulties, and is it worth to learn Russian, especially considering the latest events on the political arena and difficulties to travel to Russia now? Is it worth to spend your time on learning this language? And I want to find out some life hacks to learn languages overall from a polyglot. Davide, welcome to my channel. Benvenuto!
Hi, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Как дела?
Все хорошо, все нормально. А у тебя?
Отлично. Так, с тобой мы можем говорить как минимум на 3 языках, да, я понимаю? Английский, итальянский, русский.
Да, думаю, можно, да. А я думаю, что твой канал был на английском языке. Будут субтитры.
Да. By the way, guys, you can join our Russian-speaking club, which we hold every month. It's a 3-week course in a group chat where you will get materials to learn the most important vocabulary and grammar, practice with other participants, and take part in live speaking sessions on weekends. For With Guru option, you also get a personal chat with our teacher to get feedback for homework. Our teacher Alena is the author of the book Russian as a Foreign Language and a certified language teacher of Moscow State University. You can join one of our 3 groups from zero learners, elementary or pre-intermediate group. Hope to see you guys in our lessons soon. What languages do you speak? Can you name all of the languages?
Okay, I would say that I speak English, Russian, French, Spanish, and Italian, of course. And I have studied some other languages, but I wouldn't say that I really speak them. I know some Portugal, but mostly in a passive way. But I wouldn't say that I speak it. I've dabbled in other languages, but yeah, not to a level where I can speak them.
So you speak 6 languages, 5 to 6.
5? I think it's 5. Yeah, 5, maybe 4 foreign languages.
Wow. Yeah. How long it took you to learn all of these languages?
Probably something like 7 or 8 years. And actually in the past few years, I haven't been that active learning languages, so I haven't really learned any new languages. I've been focusing on other things, on my project. But I was more into learning languages in the past, and yeah.
And why did you choose these languages? For example, why Portuguese?
Yeah. Well, Portuguese, I can't really speak it. I can understand it pretty well, but I can't really speak it so far. But yeah, for instance, if we're talking about Portuguese, I already knew Spanish and Italian, so that makes Portuguese really easy to learn if you're already into Romance languages, as they call them. So. And
it's also similar to Italian, right?
Yeah. It is part of the same language family, so it's pretty closely related.
By the way, is it true that Italians can understand Spanish, but Spanish people can't understand Italian without learning it?
I'm not sure about that. Actually, I have a video on my channel where I went to Madrid and I spoke to people on the street, in a park actually, in Italian, using very basic sentences. And actually, you know, if I stuck to very basic words and phrases, they would understand me pretty well. I don't think it's one way around. I think it's true for both Italians and Spanish speakers.
When I came to Italy, I didn't speak Italian at all. Like, I knew one word, buongiorno, that's it.
Yeah.
And I could speak Spanish, and I would say something in Spanish to my conquilini, my roommates, like flatmates, because they didn't speak English. So I said something in Spanish and they understood.
Yeah. I mean, we're used to. I think we're now with Spanish language music becoming more and more popular. I think we're getting even more used to the Spanish language. But in general, yeah, it's they're very closely related languages.
And why did you choose to study Russian language?
Yeah, that's a good question. I never know how to reply to that question. Actually, I mean, it was just an option that I had in university, and I thought it was an interesting challenge. That's what I would say. Because the languages that I had studied previously were, apart from English, they were all Romance languages, and I was really into languages at the time. I wanted to make that basically, like my job, I guess. I wanted to work with languages in some ways, and I thought, okay, I should learn Russian. It's much more complicated than everything I've already studied, and I don't know anything about it, so let's go for it.
Wow. And for how long did you study Russian? And do you still study it or no?
Well, not really. Right now, I'm I haven't really used Russian in a couple of years. I mean, I use it when I speak sometimes. I mean, I speak with some friends, but not very often. I studied it for I would say probably 5 years, very seriously. So as I said, I did study it in university, but that wasn't the main thing that helped my Russian, I would say. Maybe we can get into that if you want. So I did a lot of work on my own, and actually, so technically speaking, I have a C2 certificate in Russian. I don't.
C2?
Yeah, I don't really think I deserve it,
Wow.
to be honest, because.
Что, реально?
Yeah, I don't think I deserve it because, especially now, my spoken Russian has gotten way worse. But even back then, when it was at the peak, I don't think I really had a C2 in Russian. I think they kind of helped me with the exam a little bit because I was the only one doing the C2 exam at the center where I was doing it. So I think they were like, wow, this guy's really brave. We're going to help him out a little bit. But yeah, technically speaking, I have a C2. It's not the same C2
wow.
as what I have in English.
I want to see how you speak then. Мы можем продолжить немножко на русском, наверное.
Давай. Ну, как я тебе сказал, да, на бумаге у меня C2, не знаю, будет ли я оправдан.
Где вообще ты сейчас используешь русский язык?
Нигде, если честно. То есть, на самом деле я был в России в прошлом, то есть несколько лет назад. У меня есть русские друзья, но сейчас я не прям очень часто с ними общаюсь, так что не очень часто говорю на русском, хотя недавно у меня была хорошая возможность говорить на русском, потому что русский знакомый приехал ко мне и остался у меня дома на пару дней, так что... Ну, он знает итальянский, но мы говорили на русском. Кстати, он блогер.
Классно.
Он преподает итальянский русским.
Прикольно. У тебя идеальное произношение. Я вот сейчас даже забыла на пару секунд, что я разговариваю с иностранцем. Вот серьезно.
Спасибо.
Really great pronunciation. And do you think that for Italians, the Russian pronunciation is kind of easy?
Well, for certain things, maybe it is, but there are things that are a little harder for us. Especially, I would say, there are certain sounds that we don't have. The dark L sound, we don't have it in Italian. So in Italian, we'd always say la. Or the soft consonants are incredibly hard for Italians. You know, the sh, ch, all of those. And they're not even taught to us. When I was in university, I wasn't really taught how that works really well, but it's an essential part of Russian pronunciation, I feel like. And Yeah.
Because I noticed that for Russians, the Italian pronunciation is kind of easy. We have all these sounds. And I was also told several times that when I speak Italian, I speak very clearly, like fine Italian. So I thought it would be vice versa.
Yeah,
like
I mean, for the most
Italians.
part, it is. I mean, it's not like if you come from English or maybe even German, I would say it would be much harder. So yeah, but there are a couple of things here and there that you have to pay attention to.
What was the most difficult for you in the Russian language to learn it?
Many things, but so one thing is the vocabulary, because if you come from like in my case, I was used to, as I said, Romance languages and even English, which is a Germanic language, but all of these languages have a lot of vocabulary, a lot of shared vocabulary, because even English has so many words from French historically that they're very easy to recognize. In Russian, most words are not recognizable.
Yeah.
So you have to
Even
learn.
though
Yeah.
I noticed some words in Italian and Russian which are the same.
Yeah.
For example, ananas, then luna, luna, vitrina, vitrina, discoteca, discoteca.
Yeah. I mean, there are a few words that are the same or they're very similar. Russian borrowed a lot of words from French, for instance, and so they're going to be very similar to Italian in most cases because Italian and French are related. But still, for the most part, it's very hard to learn words that are completely different. They're not related at all. So that's one thing. The other thing would probably be the grammar.
Oh my gosh, we Russians learn it for 11 years at school, and then some people can fail this exam in Russian.
Yeah. It's, there are a lot of aspects about Russian grammar that are hard for, people coming from other European languages, non-Slavic languages. There are certain concepts like verb aspect. So, vid, glagola.
But hey, even though you say that it's difficult, it took you how many years to pass this C2 certificate?
So I did it in 2019 and I started in 2014. So I think that's 5 years. Yeah. Actually,
5 years to get
6
to
years,
C2.
actually. Yeah, 6 years. Yeah, I mean, I still... it's not like I don't make any mistakes. Nobody ever, stops making mistakes. But especially with Russian grammar. But
Yeah. Do you read some Russian literature?
not that much, to be honest.
Maybe classic?
I haven't read much Russian literature. And that's actually interesting because many people get into Russian because of the literature and the classics. Wait a second, am I still recording? Because the screen turned black. Just wait a second, let me check.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was saying the reason why many people start to learn Russian is because of the literature and the classics, but it wasn't really my main interest or my interest at all, to be honest, which is strange. Yeah. So I haven't read much. I did read one thing, Смерть Ивана Ильича, by...
Wow, that's an interesting choice.
Yeah. No, it was something that I found on the internet, which had a translated... It was an interesting thing that I used to learn when I wasn't too good. But yeah, I've tried to get into the longer classics, but it's hard because it's a different language, It's an older language, lots of words that you don't use in everyday life, so it's a much more difficult challenge.
Yeah, especially some of the classical literature is sometimes even hard to read for Russians too. Not because you won't understand some words, etc., but just the style of the language of writing. It's a bit old style, and the way they describe things, like the Russian authors can describe just one tree for 5 pages.
Yeah, exactly.
And in the modern life, it's like, oh, come on, why?
Yeah, we don't
He's
care about that.
describing
we care
tree
about
for
dialogues
5
and
pages. Yeah. And now people can't even watch sometimes a video on TikTok for 30 seconds. And here, imagine 5 pages about just one thing.
yeah, it takes patience.
Yeah, but I love Russian classics, so I advise you to give it a try.
Yeah, maybe at some point I will.
And what about the Cyrillic alphabet? Was it hard? Because before you only learned European languages, and then this alphabet comes.
Yeah. No, it's not the hardest part of the language, actually. I mean, it's something you learn in a week. And of course, it takes time to get better at reading it, because there's always going to be a little bit of an obstacle, with this different alphabet. You're not going to be as fast as you are in your native alphabet. But it's not the hardest part. As I said, there are other things that are much more complicated. And
do you think that overall Russian was worth learning, was worth these 5 years of your time?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, at the end of the day, even if I don't use it professionally, it's still something that enriched me a lot, and what's the word I'm thinking of? It allowed me to have really great experiences, to meet people, and to learn a lot about a culture I knew nothing about. So I think learning a language is always going to make you a richer person. Richer, I'm talking about culturally and in terms of experiences, knowledge.
Nice. And do you think that it's still useful to learn Russian, considering the events on the political arena and difficulties to travel to Russia right now?
Yeah, I would say so. And I mean, I think it's inevitable that a lot of people will feel hatred towards the Russian language, or they will not really feel like it's a language they want to learn. But first of all, a language, and the Russian language, but any language in general, is not owned by a government. The Russian language is much older than that, and it just stands on its own, with its classic, its literature, its history. So also, the Russian language is spoken in many countries, even in Ukraine, but in so many former USSR countries. So it's spoken in so many places, and I still think it makes a lot of sense to learn Russian if there's anything that you find interesting in all of this I've mentioned.
That's good to hear. And what advice would you give to people who would like to learn Russian?
Yeah, I would actually...
Maybe some life hacks.
Yeah, I mean, my approach to languages is try to, get exposed to the language, to immerse yourself in the language as much as possible, and especially with languages that have such a complicated grammar like Russian. If you want to master all of the little grammar details before actually listening to the language and having some real experience with the language, it's going to be so depressing that you're going to quit in no time. So my piece of advice would be start using the language in a way that's meaningful to you and that's interesting. There are so many YouTube channels to learn Russian from a very basic level, like A1, A2. And for that, you don't need to learn all of the little details. Don't focus too much on that. Focus on, making your vocabulary bigger and bigger, learning new words, and then little by little you can get into the grammar and into the complex aspects of it. But don't go crazy at the beginning. Don't think you can learn everything about the grammar, because it's going to be just depressing.
Wow, thank you for the advice, and I think that it's relevant to learning any foreign language.
It is, yeah. It is.
Yeah, and while learning Russian, have you noticed also some things about the culture? Because the language is always connected with the culture, yeah? Mm-hmm. For example, when I studied Chinese, they have a question, how are you? Ничима, which like literally means, have you eaten? So it's like food means so much to the Chinese. Yeah, I make this conclusion. So maybe when you were learning Russian, you also noticed some things like, oh, this is not usual for my culture. I don't know.
Yeah, why would you express this idea with these words? I would have to think about that, but off the top of my head, that's not the correct English expression. Off the top of my head, I think. Off the top of my head, I would say something that I've always found interesting is Ruski mat. Because it's so rich and so it's like a language in and of itself.
Rich Russian language.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting though, like the way it works.
Wait, in Italian, you don't think that you have, how to say mat?
In Italian or in English?
In English.
Swear words?
Curse
words, yeah.
Curse
no, we
words.
do. But it doesn't work the same way. Like I'm not going to give examples right now, but in Russian you have 4 main roots. And with these roots, you can add prefixes to it, and you can form so many words. It's like Legos, with these building blocks, which is, like Russian works in general. But the way mat works is really interesting to me. And it's so expressive, like, with this friend that I had come over to my house recently, we were exploring all the different words and verbs in mat, and it's insane.
That's crazy. Maybe also some other things.
Some other things.
If something comes to your mind.
Let me think. No, I should have prepared for this. Should have thought about something.
Take your time.
So you mean something like that, like your Chinese example, for instance?
Yeah, or maybe you noticed some other aspect. For example, my Russian friend lately, she's learning Portuguese. And she saw in the examples, simple dialogues when you learn a language. Yeah. And there was written like, our housewife did some work at the house. And she was like, oh, it means that for Portuguese people, it's normal to have a like house lady who cooks or cleans. And in Russia, we usually don't have such lady.
Yeah.
So she was like, oh, I see that in Portugal it's normal.
Yeah, I think it's common in Brazil. I don't know about Portugal, but it's very common in Brazil. But yeah, I mean, I don't really have a clear answer to that. But yeah, as you get exposed to the language, you notice things about the culture. Like, I don't know, for the fact that Russians have the idea of the dacha. Like, that's something that you learn because you see it in learning materials and you learn about this concept, for instance.
For example, in Italy, usually people don't have dacha.
Well, we might have a vacation home, which is similar, I guess. But, like, isn't the Russian dacha like in the countryside usually, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the countryside or anywhere outside of the city.
Outside of the city, okay. I mean, we do have vacation homes sometimes, some people, but it's like usually it's on the seaside. On the sea, on the coast. If you don't live there already, for instance, I live in Turin, which is a city that's far away from the sea, and so many people in the 60s bought houses where they could have the ability to to go to the sea, to go to the beach, and have a swim there, or in the mountains. Also, that's another option, but
Nice.
it's not exactly the same thing, though.
Yeah, for us, dacha is growing vegetables and everything.
Yeah, it's definitely like an experience, the dacha experience, which is similar for most
Have you
people.
ever been to Russian dacha?
No, actually, no. I would like to come, but no, it's never happened.
Next time you come to Russia, you should definitely get this
Yeah,
experience
I
because it's
know.
so different.
I know.
By the way, what places have you visited here?
I visited Moscow, St. Petersburg, and sometimes around Moscow in the what's called the Golden Ring. I think it's called like that in Russian too. Like
Золотое кольцо.
yeah. So what was it? Vladimir. Pushkin. Wait,
Cool.
Pushkin. I think it's close to St. Petersburg actually. Suzdal. Yeah. And I think that's all I've seen. Oh, I
Wow,
also
nice, nice.
Veliki Novgorod. Yeah.
Yeah, some historical sites.
Yeah, I
really
mean,
nice.
I haven't seen
Next
that
time,
much.
Russian dacha.
Yeah. No, there are so many places that I would like to go eventually. Yeah, it's probably not the right time. I don't know.
And to conclude our conversation, why do you think it's worth at all to learn foreign languages?
I think as I said earlier, it makes you a richer person culturally and spiritually. It's a great way to lose some of your stereotypes that you might have about a culture, because as you learn a language, you get into a new culture, and so some of the stereotypes you had go away because of that. It just, depending on how you use the language, you learn new things or you make new friends. If you go to a country, like the experience of visiting that country is so much better and richer if you know people and if you can use the local language. So I gave you actually 5 or 6 reasons. If I had to sum it up,
Nice.
it makes you a richer person, as I said, richer spiritually. Not necessarily financially, but...
Especially when you learn some Russian curse words.
Yeah, that makes you a top level language learner.
Okay, thank you so much, Davide, for joining me for this talk.
No problem.
Grazie mille.
Di niente.
Спасибо.
Grazie a te, спасибо тебе.
Пока-пока.
Пока.
Удачи дальше с изучением русского. Не забывай его.
И тебе с твоим каналом.
And to you guys, thank you for watching this video, and I hope that it will motivate you to learn the Russian language or any other languages, because it indeed makes you a richer person, especially if it's the Russian curse words. It's a whole new world. In the comments write who else would you like me to interview or to collab with, make your offer. Maybe then you will see that person on my channel, and like this video because it helps me to stay motivated to make more videos, and it shows YouTube that my channel is interesting, is worth watching, so it helps me to keep my channel going. So thank you a lot and bye bye.